Yes, there they are, sitting side by side in Wageningen in the Netherlands, a little bit more to the east than Delft. And Isabel has actually visited Bangkok, so some of you may have met her before. I know Jenny has. And I'm not, well, online we met, yeah. Did you bring your presentation online as well? Then, just as an introduction, so Philip Minderhoud, Dr. Philip Minderhoud is assistant professor at Wageningen University Research, and he's an expert in ground motion, in subsidence. And Isabel, I think, has just finished her master's degree, am I right? Congratulations on that. And if I'm not mistaken, she is pursuing a PhD now? Or is that wishful thinking?
In the process of applying for positions.
She's applying for positions, very good. So you sound a little bit soft. I don't know if that's on our side or... Amé was much clearer than you are, so...
Is this
yeah, this is a lot better, yeah. Yeah. And I will shut off this microphone, so then the floor is completely yours.
Yes, thanks so much, Femke, for this introduction. And hello, everyone. Well, we don't see you, but very nice to be able to present also. And thank you also for the nice presentations that were prior to this one. I will present a few minutes on some general, let's say, work and the aim that we're trying to achieve, and then I'll hand over to Isabel to talk about her Chao Phraya Delta specific work. There we go. So in general, here we see large river deltas around the world, and in color you see the elevation with respect to sea level. And as you can see that a lot of these large delta systems, including the Chao Phraya Delta, they have a very dark color. So that means that the elevation to sea level is rather low. And that makes actually these delta systems very delicate systems, very sensitive to sea level rise, climate change, and human impacts, as we all know. And changes in elevation can actually have large impacts on these ecosystems. So in these deltas, a lot of changes have happened in recent years. So here we see a delta, and when humans started to invade these deltas, we started to change the land use and build our cities. We start to use the natural resources like groundwater. We intervene in the upstream domain. We mine sand, and of course, there's a change in climate as well. And this all leads to an increasing amount of impacts like flooding, salinization, coastal flooding, coastal erosion, and also groundwater salinization, which can be enhanced if you extract it. And as we just heard in the talk prior to this, the sea level is rising because of global warming, and these deltas, they can sink. And that's, of course, what you are all also familiar about. And if we go to the fastest sinking deltas that we have in the world, we can find places that lose up to 20 centimeters each year. And that together is what we call relative sea level rise, and is what we have to, what we ideally want to know if we want to prepare ourselves for the rising water levels. So to quickly summarize a bit, and you've already showed also diagrams and things on the different processes in a delta that cause land subsidence. Of course, it's a natural process happening in the shallow subsurface in unconsolidated sediments, but also from deep-rooted processes like isostasy and tectonics. And then, of course, if humans start to add loading to the surface, they increase the compaction of the unconsolidated sediments. Also, the drainage of the surface water and surface water table lowering can cause substantial land subsidence. This is the prime reason in the Netherlands that we are 1/5 of the countries below sea level, for example. And then, of course, the extraction of fluids from the subsurface could be groundwater hydrocarbons, can also add that. Well, in this diagram, it tries to summarize all these processes and different drivers at different depths. And basically, this is the area where we work, right? If we do a measurement of a GNSS station or or INSAR, we arrive to an estimate of total subsidence, or at least subsidence with respect to the foundation of the reflector or the piled foundation that we're measuring. More or less, we can split it in different depth domains: shallow drivers causing local subsidence and deeper drivers causing more regional subsidence. And we see that the rates that are human-induced, they tend to be much higher than the natural induced rates, with the exception of large earthquake deformations that happen in some places. And also land subsidence, as you know, can be very highly variable, both in space, but also in time. And this, of course, has large implications if you try to project relative sea level rise. So this is also the reason why we try to employ models in order to create such a tool, also what Jenny presented to us earlier, a tool to go also towards the future and try to make projections rather than only measuring and having to do a mathematical interpolation or extrapolation. We try to understand processes and do a process-based extrapolation into the future. I'll give you one brief example from work in the Mekong Delta. So there's a spell error in the title. The large delta located in the neighboring country, in Vietnam largely, very lowly elevated, so small vertical changes matter a lot in terms of relative sea level rise. And there's a lot of groundwater extraction from this delta. It's basically the exploitation or overexploitation started much later than what happened in Thailand, in the Bangkok area. You see from the early 90s that actually the groundwater over-extraction started to happen from this thick multi-aquifer system. And this is also coinciding, fortunately, with the moment of groundwater observation. So here we see hydraulic heads in this well nest going back to 1995. And you can see this decreasing trend of all the confined aquifers in the system. And then up here, we see the phreatic aquifer that actually has an open connection with the surface water system. And you immediately see that it doesn't really follow the same trend. So there's a disconnect basically between the surface water system and the groundwater system because of thick clay layers. Well, if you extract groundwater then from a confined aquifer, in the sense, not a lot is happening, but especially when you start draining and reducing the pressure in your aquithards, your intercalated clay layers, then you start creating a lot of aquifer system compaction. Similar to, let's say, the reshaping of your plates, as happens to your dishes in the sink. So what we did in the Mekong Delta, this is summarizing the work of several years, was collecting a lot of data and in a way similar type of data that also Jenny presented. And with that, we built a first version of a 3D groundwater flow model. And it was constrained by this measurement of hydraulic head, and also with validated with INSAR, and we run a 1D compaction module on that. So we could simulate the change in hydraulic head for these aquifers, and with that also simulate the amount of aquifer system compaction following that from the stack of aquifers. And you see that in this diagram. So on the left side, the hydraulic head going down, and then land subsidence for the happening as well. First, we see this dot, which is around Ho Chi Minh City, and then the rest of the deltas comes alive. Basically, what we found from this study was an accelerating trend of this aquifer system compaction following the acceleration of groundwater extraction. And this was actually also confirmed later with INSAR measurements. So we have a series from 2006 to 2010, where we see in the delta 2 to 3 centimeters per year, and the rates 10 years later, they more or less doubled in the same area, 5 to 6 centimeters per year. So there's this accelerating trend happening in the Mekong Delta. And then when we have this tool, we actually also, we can use it to look into the future. So we designed similar types of, let's say, pathways as Jenny also did in her study. And with that, we can simulate different futures following those extraction pathways. So here we see the hydraulic heads. And then we can compute aquifer system compaction. And for example, also the scenario in which groundwater extraction is completely stopped abruptly, you do see an ongoing subsidence happening in the system. And this is due to the slow pressure dissipation out of the aqueducts and ongoing creep consolidation. So even if you stop the driver, there is a continuation, so to say, of the compaction. With that, we can actually create these type of graphs, and we saw these from in Amé's presentation, but here it's basically the same, but looking from the land side. So these are projections of cumulative land subsidence, and it helps in a way to differentiate the different possible futures following groundwater extraction pathways. And with that, what we can do is actually create this type of future projections of elevation. So we move from a process-based projection to actually a 3D projection of elevation change and relative sea level rise. And this is, I would say, the true value of trying to model this at this scale and in this setting. So we can really come up with these type of projections, which also are instrumental for policymakers to make their mitigation strategies. And with that, I'd like to give the floor to Isabel, and she will talk to you about the first steps of what we did for the Calcraia Delta.
Thank you. And we'll talk about my master thesis, in which I went to develop a variable density groundwater flow model for the data scarce Calcraia Delta, for which I have these sub-questions. Well, what I did, I needed to collect the data and transform the data, and needed a conceptual model to go to a hydrogeological model, groundwater model, and performance for it. So sensitivity analysis on it, and as was said before, last autumn, I had the opportunity to go to Thailand, which was very nice. For the data, well, for the model, you need elevation data, layering, hydraulic activity, potential recharge river, and also groundwater extraction, and to validate later groundwater head time series.
Isabel, sorry to interrupt you. Can you speak up a little bit, because you're becoming less clear than Philip was before?
Is this better?
Yes, definitely. Thanks.
Okay, I'm sorry. For the data, I had the help of the Department of Groundwater Resources and Access at University, for example, but also from Jenny and for the elevation, I used for the land FATDEM, which is forest and building remote variance DEM. It's a surface model for which the forest and buildings are removed. So it moved towards a terrain model almost, and it got a resolution of 30 by 30 meters, so it's very nice. But it's a surface model. So for the bathymetry of the Bay of Bangkok, I used the FEPCO data set, which is a much coarser resolution. And for the layering of the delta, I got the data from the DGR, that are all the purple points you can see in the data set. Most of them had the first layer which is the Bangkok clay layer, but some also started in the first aquifer, the Bangkok aquifer. And most porlogs ended up in the basement, but also some ended up in the Nakong Lang or Notaburi aquifer. I'm sorry for my pronunciation. Then about the connectivity, I also got data from the DGR for the aquifers that are the interpolation on the right, the data on the right, and for the top layer, the Bangkok clay layer, I could use Clint, which provides the permeability. For the precipitation, I could make use of the Hydroinformatics Institute data, which is rain gauges of the whole of Thailand. Zooming in on the delta only, I got 96 rain gauges. For a model, I needed to be a raster data, so I interpolated it and got means per month to get the yearly variation. And well, yeah, you can clearly see the rainy season in September and October, and the dry season from December to February. And also that the Khao Yai National Park and the Sangkampen mountain range there has higher precipitation rates. And north of the city there is also a little bit more precipitation. For the evapotranspiration, I made use of the FAO dataset for evapotranspiration interception. It's a monthly data set, and I also got points and needed to interpolate it. And you can clearly see that the evapotranspiration in the city is less because of the built area. Combining these two potential recharge, which is actually precipitation minus evapotranspiration, you can see that it's slightly negative from December to April, and during the rainy season it becomes positive. Another data I had was the groundwater extraction. It was data from the DGR, but also from Jenny. There are a lot of points where groundwater is extracted, as you can see on the right, but the time frame is only from 2016 to 2021 in recording and I needed literature to have also the groundwater extraction before 2016. And you can clearly see that around 1997 and 2001, the extraction was peaking. The groundwater heads, Jenny showed already, there was it also around 2000, and the points were more on Bangkok, where they were measured. Well, if you combine extraction and the groundwater heads, you can see the overlap, and there's a strong negative correlation, especially for the Nakhon Luang and Nonthaburi aquifer in pink and light blue. Then to my model, on the top right you see the hydrogeological interpolation, and for the groundwater model, I had the first failure reconstruction and to get the right salinity in the model, with rising sea levels. And after that, I had an extraction period for the 2000 to 2021, as I had data there. Some results of this for spatial variability, on the edges you see the high water levels, and also at the places where the rivers are. And here is the lowest heads east of Bangkok. And then to my sensitivity analysis, I tried to see the influence of hydraulic connectivity and extraction. Well, for hydraulic connectivity, when it goes up, the groundwater heads go up, and it's a nonlinear relation. And this means that recharge is dominating in the model. For the extraction, obviously when the extraction goes up, groundwater heads go down, and this is a quite linear relationship. For the spatial variability of my, you can see the same actually as in the output, where the high water levels were, there is not much change, and the changes are occurring at places where east of Bangkok again. Well, to conclude, the model is responsive but needs further development. The groundwater heads depleted and recovered, and there's a strong correlation with the extraction. The factors for the spatial conformity and precipitation is the rainy season, obviously, and the orographic effects of the mountain ranges in the east. And the evapotranspiration is lower in the city. And the model is recharge dominated. And yeah, it was only a small master thesis, so recommendations for further research are the extraction before the year 2000, also in the model, and then going to subsidence in the model, which is where you want to go, recharge and sea level need to be transient for that, and then research on soil subsidence in Chapaya Delta can be performed. Thank you for listening. Do you have any questions?
Thanks a lot. Let's first applause. Are there any questions for Isabel or Philip? I was really impressed by the results and animations and the level of detail also of your model, Isabel. I'm looking around in the room. Any questions? Jenny?
Hi, Isabel. The camera's behind me, but I'm looking at you on the screen. Oh, yes. So, did you take into account land use within the city? You mentioned how evapotranspiration is lower, right? Because there would be less of available surface for that to go up. But then was recharge also affected? And so was recharge limited to like the edge of the basin then?
I didn't include land use within the city. I had them point within the city, but mostly the areas were extracted to the evapotranspiration.
Thanks, Isabel. Any other questions? Wim has a question.
Hi, nice to see both your presentations. As you see, I'm also working more on the measurement of the subsidence. How valuable would it be for you to verify your existing model with like the INSAR or then calibrate it so it becomes absolute subsidence in the area? And also, maybe I missed that in the presentation, what's the impact of soil compaction, and are you taking that into account? I might have missed that, you know. There's just two questions I have for you. Very nice work also.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'll give the floor to Isabel because I think you're addressing the Chapaya model, right? The new one that we are being developed. Please, Isabel.
Soil compaction is not yet in the model. It's only a grandfather model. And yeah, the INSAR data is really valuable to validate the model when subsidence is in it, but it's not that far yet.
Yeah. So basically, these are future, in that sense, future steps, and I hope we can venture in that direction. And then for sure, let's say all the direct measurements of land subsidence are very valuable. Also, in respect to if you talk about INSAR, and I think it was your talk where you already mentioned also with the GNSS that they measure at the depth of the foundation, right? So that gives you already a sort of a depth-specific displacement signal, and I think those details of measurements are very informative of calibrating such models in a higher level, let's say, than simply using an INSAR image without any of these insights. So it's definitely, these definitely have to go hand in hand. So. And you're doing a lot of excellent work in Bangkok areas, and let's hope in the next few years we can assimilate that into into a framework. Thank you.
Next time, come to Bangkok is the comment I heard here. But the assimilation of everything together is, of course, music to my ears. If I don't see any more questions. The next speaker was supposed to be Tijmen de Boer, who is an MSc student of ours, but unfortunately he's at a training for his new job. That happens with MSc students. So I will try to give his presentation with it. I say goodbye to, I don't know where I should wave, I'm probably there. Goodbye to Philip once and Isabel. Thanks a lot again. Impressive results.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks a lot. And I'm looking at the technical